Cardio, cardio, cardio. Where do you even begin? It's one of the most popular and oldest questions ever. Let's keep this simple. Our bodies like extremes. And not necessarily deadly extremes, but our bodies like the opposing ends of the spectrum. We don't do well with this slow and steady wins the race kind of modality. It doesn't suit any sport very well, except for, jogging, which isn't much of a sport. It certainly does not suit combat pace very well. It does not suit sporting event pace very well. It does not simulate a crisis or survival simulation pace very well. The middle ground cardio is really not very good. What you need to focus on rather than that is be able to walk and hike and be able to do that for long periods of time. Because if you find yourself in an emergency situation, or if you find yourself in a combat situation, you will find that you may need to go 5 miles, 10 miles on foot. Are you going to run the whole way there, exhaust the majority of your energy, and then carry out your combat mission? No, you're going to hike at a pretty damn good pace, but you're not going to be jogging the way there. On the other side of it, your fight pace, your game pace, your survival pace is like sprint intervals. It is push, 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 back it off. Push, 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 back it off. It's more of a pulse than it is a steady stream. And so thinking of it in those terms, you need to be able to pulse and recover, pulse and recover, pulse and recover over here to be able to carry out your emergency, combat, survival, crisis pace. But you also need to be over here able to move in a method of conserving energy but at pace, moving well. Now, running, hiking, what's the definition? Or walking, rather, not running. Walking is defined as gating with one foot always in contact with the ground. You cannot be considered walking as soon as both feet are in the air. You are either hopping or jogging or lightly running, however you want to term it, it is no longer walking. One foot must always be in contact with the ground in order for it to be considered walking. Hiking is just an extension of that. It's usually over uneven terrain, difficult terrain, at an incline, whatever, and also usually under some sort of load. Hiking is particularly useful. You should be able to carry a 35-pound pack for 5 miles in a reasonable amount of time. Under 2 hours would be good. Hour and a half would be particularly nice. That's a pretty good clip. But those numbers are somewhat arbitrary. Now, on the opposite end of it, how long do you need to pulse for? It's a good question. Depending on your fitness level. If you're still a beginner, you're not going to be able to go for much, too long. You may not be able to go for more than 15 minutes of hardcore pulsing. That's okay. You will work up to it. At the higher ends, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. After a point, though, you're going to find diminishing returns. In walking, they found that walking more than half an hour at a time, as far as the exercise benefit, you start seeing the returns diminishing at about half an hour. Even though it's somewhat arbitrary, in professional fighting, in cage fighting, The top levels, title bouts and whatnot, they go 5-minute rounds, 1 minute break in between. That's 29 minutes. Now, they're going at fight pace, which is the rapid fire pause kind of pace, and then they have a 1 minute break, every 5 minutes. But still, 29 minutes, about a half hour. So you got about a half hour here, and you got about a half hour here of pulsing. So, high intensity pulse, about a half hour. Low intensity, very low intensity walking, about a half hour. Moving beyond that, you're going to see diminishing returns in your gains. Now, depending on how you are periodizing this, you may be able to extend it. It depends on what you're doing. But the middle ground is not going to do you very much good. It does not simulate any kind of real-world events, and is not particularly useful to any game, activity, crisis, situation, anything like that. So I would say walking, when you're in active recovery mode, walking is great. Hiking is an excellent activity. Let's just skip the running. Now, theoretically, you're not going to hit the negative effects of running, of that midline pace. You're not going to hit the negative effects of that until about a half hour in. Once again, you're talking diminishing returns at about a half hour. These are just commonalities. It's not a hard, fast rule, but these are commonalities shown in the various studies that have been done. So, depending on your pace, you're going to find that about a half hour is where you top out before you need to make adjustment. Now in other circles you say 45 minutes. That's okay. Go 45 minutes. Some people will say 90 minutes. Go for 90 minutes, but I guarantee you, you go 90 minutes, you're going to be taking a break in there, you're going to be slowing down, you're going to be adjusting your pace, because your energy reserves are only so much. I mean, unless you're, a Kenyan, then you can just marathon everywhere all the time. That was a racist joke. Not really. But I don't have much else to say for it. You should be conditioning. You should be cardiorespiratory conditioning. You need to work up your heart and your lungs to increase capacity and to be able to control them for recovery. But stay away from the midline. Learn how to balance the opposites, the yin and the yang. Learn how to balance the recovery and it's not really building, it's just catabolic. You're working the stress. It's positive stress, but the stress and recovery. Learn how to work the stress and recovery. Pulsing. Pulse, pulse, pulse. That's all I got for you tonight. Good journey.